Empty your lockers.
Clear your lockers before noon, Derek Carter said, loud enough for every wrench in the shop to stop moving. This place is being refinanced today, and I'm not carrying 4 grown strays on the books. The words crossed the concrete floor of Carter Brothers Auto Repair harder than the air gun that had just gone quiet. Luis stood beside the alignment rack with grease on his hands. Tasha froze near the parts counter. Marcus and Eli stared from beneath the raised hood of a delivery van. They were adults who had trained there for years now, called disposable before customers, suppliers, and the loan officer at the door. Bun Carter wiped his hands on a faded red rag and crossed the service bay. At 56, he carried the measured calm of a man used to lifting more than pride. "You don't talk to them that way," he said. Derek laughed. His expensive coat was too clean for the room. "Still playing Father Ben, they're other people's people. You taught them to fix cars, not inherit property." Bun's jaw tightened. "They earned their place here." "No. You gave them a place because you needed somebody to need you." Tasha lowered her clipboard. Marcus watched Ben, waiting for anger. Ben only folded the red rag into a neat square. Behind, Derek, through the office window, an old black ledger rested beneath the refinance papers. Its corners were worn smooth. A strip of masking tape on the spine read, "Shop Transfers." Derek followed Ben's gaze. "That antique won't save you," he said. "The bank needs signatures, not memories." The loan officer, Carol Vance, adjusted the folder in her hands. "Before anything closes, ownership has to be verified." "It will be," Derek said. "My name is on the original business filing. My brother has only been managing the place while I was away." "Away," Louise muttered. "You disappeared." Derek's smile thinned. Bun raised one hand toward Luis, protecting him from the answer. Derek pointed across the bay. "That is why they're leaving. No discipline. No gratitude. 4 charity cases with completion cards Ben printed in the back office." Eli's face reddened. Those cards hung above their workstations, representing late shifts, retaken exams, earned certifications, and steady work. Bun had signed everyone. Now Derek treated them like decorations. A man in a dark suit entered behind Carol and studied the lifts, tool cabinets, and diagnostic machines as though assigning prices to them. Derek straightened. "My creditor is here. Once the refinance clears, my obligations get handled. So let's stop pretending this is a family meeting." Bun's eyes moved from the man to the 4 apprentices. That was when they understood. Derek had not returned for the shop, the family name, or the brother he abandoned. He had returned because someone intended to collect. Carol opened her folder. "Closing is at 2:30. Any ownership dispute must be resolved before then." "There is no dispute," Derek said. "Ben can stay as manager if he behaves. The trainees leave today." Partners Ben replied. Derek blinked. "They're not trainees anymore." A faint change passed through Carol's expression. The creditor checked his watch. Derek leaned over the counter. "Calling them partners doesn't make it true." "No," Bun said. "What I kept makes it true." For one brief second, Derek's confidence slipped. Then he reached for the office door. "Bring out your little certificates. We'll let the adults decide what they're worth." Bun did not follow immediately. He faced the 4 people Derek had called strays. They carried anger, shame, and fear of losing a place that trusted them. "Don't clear anything," Ben said. He entered the office, lifted the old transfer ledger, and placed 4 apprenticeship completion cards inside its cover. Derek was still smiling when Ben carried it toward the transfer office. He had no idea the ledger held one decision from his past that could leave his creditor with nothing. And before the afternoon was over, the 4 people he had called disposable would become the reason the Carter name remained above the door. To understand why, Ben protected that ledger for years. We have to go back to the winter. Derek vanished, and the morning the bank chained the shop shut. 7 years earlier, Ben Carter arrived at the shop before sunrise and found a steel chain looped through the front doors. Snow had collected along the curb on Detroit Avenue, turning gray beneath the traffic. A yellow foreclosure notice had been taped to the glass directly over the faded Carter Brothers Auto Repair logo. Bun stood beneath the buzzing security light and read the notice twice. Derek's truck was gone. So were the shop's payroll envelope, the emergency cash box, and nearly every customer deposit from the office safe. Bun called his brother 17 times that morning. Every call went to voicemail. By 8, 3 employees had arrived. By 9, the bank representative was explaining that the mortgage had been unpaid for 4 months. Derek had borrowed against equipment missed supplier invoices and used the shop as collateral for debts Ben had never seen. The employees left before lunch. Bun stayed in the parking lot until the snow covered his boots. Carter brothers had belonged to their father, who taught both sons to rebuild transmissions before either could legally drive. Derek had inherited the charm. Ben inherited the patience. Their father used to say a repair shop survived on 2 things: honest estimates and people who came back when they said they would. Derek had failed at both. Bun could have walked away. He had enough experience to find work at a dealership, and nobody would have blamed him for letting the bank take the building. Instead, he sold his pickup, emptied his retirement account, and negotiated 6 weeks to rescue the loan. The bank required a transfer of controlling ownership before accepting his money. Derek appeared once, just long enough to sign the shop over and avoid personal exposure to the foreclosure. He barely read the paperwork. Bun remembered the pen scratching across the transfer ledger while Derek complained about the cold. "You always wanted the greasy little kingdom," Derek said. "Now it's yours." Then he left Cleveland. Bun kept the ledger in the bottom drawer of the office desk. Not because he feared Derek would return, but because the page carried the exact moment his brother chose escape over responsibility. For months, Bun worked alone. He opened at 6, swept the bays, answered phones, repaired engines, ordered parts, balanced invoices, and slept on a folding cot behind the supply shelves when the furnace at his apartment was shut off. The shop survived 1 week at a time. Years later, the routine was still written into his body. He arrived before dawn, unlocked the side entrance, and switched on each bank of lights. The air compressors coughed awake. The heater rattled through the ducts. Coffee brewed in an old steel pot beside a stack of repair manuals. At 6:30, Luis usually arrived first. He had come to the shop at 26 after losing a warehouse job. He knew almost nothing about engines, but he could listen to a failing bearing and remember the sound. Tasha followed organized enough to find any invoice in under a minute and stubborn enough to redo a brake assembly until every measurement matched. Marcus had once bounced between temporary jobs. Eli had spent 2 years being told he was too slow with his hands. Bun never called any of them charity. He called them apprentices. Every morning began the same way. Ben assigned work, checked safety procedures, then stood back far enough to let them make decisions. When they made mistakes, he corrected the work without humiliating the person. "You're not here to impress me," he often said. "You're here to become dependable." By the 5th year, they were handling repairs that once required Ben's supervision. By the 6th, customers began requesting them by name. Still, the shop's finances remained thin. The roof leaked above Bay 3. 2 lifts needed hydraulic seals. The diagnostic computer was outdated, and a commercial loan taken during the foreclosure rescue carried an interest rate that seemed to punish Ben for surviving. The refinance scheduled for Friday afternoon could finally lower the payment and fund the repairs. Without it, the shop might last another winter. With it, Ben could offer the 4 apprentices formal partnership shares after their completion cards were filed. I had not told them yet. He wanted the papers complete before making promises. On Thursday night, after everyone left, Ben removed the transfer ledger from the desk drawer. He set it beside 4 cream-colored apprenticeship cards, each bearing a name, completion date, and his signature. The cards were simple: no gold seals, no expensive frames. But Ben had watched every hour behind them. I ran his thumb over the edge of Tasha's card, then placed all 4 inside the ledger for safekeeping. A framed photograph of his father hung above the desk. The glass had cracked near one corner, splitting the image between the 2 brothers. Bun rarely spoke to it. That night he did. "They stayed," he murmured. The office phone rang. Bun checked the wall clock. It was after 9. Carter Brothers Auto Repair. For several seconds there was only road noise. Then Derek's voice came through the receiver. "Still answering Dad's phone like it belongs to you." Bun's hand became still around the cord. "Where are you?" "Close enough." Bun glanced through the office window at the dark service bays. Derek continued, almost cheerful. "I heard about the refinance. 2:30 tomorrow, right?" Bun said nothing. "I'll be there before closing. Tell the bank not to sign anything without me. You have no place in that loan. I have my name on the building. You gave up more than your name." A pause followed. Then Derek's voice hardened. "Don't make decisions until I arrive." The line went dead. Bond remained behind the desk listening to the dial tone. He opened the ledger to the transfer page. Derek's signature was still there, pressed into paper yellowed by time. Bond should have felt protected by it. Instead, he remembered how reckless his brother could become when cornered. The next morning, Ben had told the apprentices only that the refinance meeting might be difficult. He asked them to finish the scheduled repairs and avoid the office unless called. At 11:40, a black sedan stopped outside. Derek emerged wearing a wool coat and the expression of a man returning to collect something he had never earned. A second vehicle parked behind him. The man who climbed out carried a narrow briefcase and photographed the shop before entering. Bun watched from behind the service counter. The deadline was less than 3 hours away, and Derek had not come alone. Derek entered the shop as though the front door had been waiting for him. He did not greet Ben. He surveyed the service bays, the new tire machine, and the framed certificates along the wall. His eyes lingered on every improvement made after he left. The man with the briefcase followed at a slower pace. "This is Nolan Price," Derek announced. "He represents people I owe." Nolan offered Ben a restrained nod. "I'm here to identify assets connected to Mr. Carter's ownership interests. Nothing more, unless the refinance proceeds." "There are no ownership interests," Ben said. Derek removed his gloves. "That is your opinion. It's the record. Then you won't mind us checking." Two the apprentices continued working, though the rhythm had changed. Ratchets clicked more softly. Conversations stopped whenever Derek raised his voice. Derek appeared to enjoy being heard. He told Nolan that the shop had been founded by their father and passed to both sons. He described himself as the brother who handled expansion financing and customer growth. Ben, he said, had always preferred staying beneath a hood. The version sounded polished enough to be believable. It left out the missed payments, the vanished deposits, and the winter chain across the doors. Nolan wrote several notes. At noon, Carol Vance arrived from the lender with the refinance packet. She carried herself carefully aware that every sentence might matter later. "We need to resolve the ownership concern before closing," she said. "Until then, the loan remains pending." Derek smiled as if the delay proved his authority. "I told you there was a problem." Carol did not return the smile. "You told us you may hold an interest. That has not been established." "I'm a Carter. My name is still on the sign." Bond rested both hands on the service counter. "A name on painted metal isn't ownership." Derek's voice dropped. "It was enough when you needed me to build this place." Louise paused beside a tool cart. Bond answered quietly. "Dad built it. The rest of us were supposed to protect it." For an instant, something sharp surfaced in Derek's expression. Then he faced Carol and resumed the role of reasonable businessman. "My brother is emotional. He has become attached to these trainees, and I believe he's made commitments he had no right to make." Tasha emerged from the parts room carrying an invoice folder. Derek took it from her without asking. "What is this?" "Supplier reconciliation," she said. "You handle accounting now. I handle parts and purchasing." Derek flipped through the pages, stopping at her initials beside several corrected charges. This is exactly the problem he told Carol. "Unlicensed trainees handling financial records. I'm not unlicensed." "Then show me a partnership agreement." Tasha held his gaze. Bunn said the paperwork would follow completion. "So there isn't one." The question sounded less like curiosity than a verdict. Derek placed the folder on the counter and pushed it away from her. Several invoices slid onto the floor. Tasha crouched to gather them. Bunn moved around the counter, but she spoke before he could. "I've got it." Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. Derek watched her collect the papers. "This is a business, Ben, not a shelter for people who need confidence." Marcus set down his wrench. Bond gave him a brief shake of the head. That restraint was the first rule Derek learned to weaponize. He knew Ben would absorb an insult before risking anyone else's job or the refinance. So he continued. He questioned Luis about customer estimates. He demanded that Eli explain the inspection procedure on a truck already signed off for pickup. When Eli hesitated over one technical term, Derek laughed and asked Nolan whether uncertainty reduced the value of completed work. Nolan closed his notebook. "I assess property, Mr. Carter, not employees." "They're not employees," Derek said. "They're apprentices my brother refuses to let go." Bond's voice sharpened. "They finished their hours." "According to whom?" "According to the program we've run for 6 years." Derek faced Carol. Was that program approved by the lender? The lender does not certify mechanics. Exactly. So these cards Ben keeps talking about may mean nothing. Above the workstation's four-framed completion cards seemed suddenly smaller. The apprentices knew what they had learned. Customers knew the quality of their work. Yet, in a room ruled by contracts, debt, and formal titles, Derek's questions made years of labor sound informal and fragile. At 12:30, a tow truck arrived with a sedan that would not start. The driver handed Luis the keys. Owner needs it by 4. Derek intercepted them. No new work until ownership is settled. Luis glanced at Ben. We already accepted the call, Ben said, and I'm protecting the assets from unauthorized use. You don't control the bays. Derek dropped the keys onto the counter. Prove it. Carol opened the refinance packet and removed a single-page ownership summary. The preliminary title search shows the business name connected historically to both brothers. It also references a later transfer, but the scanned record is incomplete. Derek's shoulders eased. Hahn noticed. What part is incomplete, he asked. The receiving owner's entry is faint. We requested the original transfer documentation, but the county archive has not returned it. Derek spread his hands. Then there is no verified transfer. There is an unresolved transfer, Carol corrected, which means nothing closes today. If ownership is not confirmed by 2:30, yes. The wall clock read 12:37. Bon had fewer than 2 hours. Derek leaned closer to the ownership summary. The confidence on his face no longer seemed entirely performed. Perhaps he had forgotten what he signed. Perhaps he believed an incomplete scan could erase the original. Bon's gaze shifted toward the office. The transfer ledger remained in the bottom drawer with the 4 completion cards tucked inside. He could have brought it out then, but Nolan was not an ownership official. Carol had not yet opened the formal closing, and Derek had arrived, ready to turn every fact into an argument. Bon needed the proof entered at the right moment before the right witnesses where his brother could not dismiss it as another shop story. So he said only the original isn't at the county archive. Derek studied him. Where is it? Bon did not answer. A chair scraped inside the office as Carol prepared the closing table. Derek's attention moved to the desk, then to the lower drawer. His smile returned. Whatever you're hiding, he said, I suggest you find it before I do. At that moment, the telephone rang. Tasha answered. After listening for several seconds, she covered the receiver. It's the lender's legal department, she told Carol. They want to know whether to freeze the refinance. Derek reached for the phone. Bon reached it first, and with the deadline tightening around everything he had saved, Ben finally understood that his brother was not trying merely to claim the shop. I was trying to make sure no one else could prove they belonged there. Bon kept one hand on the receiver. This is Ben Carter, he said. Do not freeze the refinance yet. A woman from the lender's legal department introduced herself as Dana Cole. Her tone was courteous and exact. We have an unresolved ownership entry, she said. Unless original proof is produced before closing, the application will be suspended. How long would the suspension last? I can't estimate that. A new title review may be required. Bon glanced through the office glass at the roof stain spreading above Bay 3. The refinance was not a convenience. It was the only way to replace the damaged lift seals, repair the roof, and keep the winter utility bills from swallowing payroll. What form of proof do you require? The original transfer record or a certified copy? Ms. Vance can review it on site and send it to us. Bon's eyes settled on the bottom desk drawer. I have the original. Derek's posture changed. Dana continued. Then present it during the closing. We will remain available until 2:45. Bon thanked her and ended the call. Derek gave a short laugh. You have something you call an original. Carol checked the time. If Mr. Carter has the transfer record, we'll review it at the formal meeting. Why wait? Derek asked. Let's see it now. Because the loan officer requested the record at closing, Ben said. You're stalling. No, I'm following the process you interrupted. The reply landed cleanly enough that even Nolan lowered his eyes to hide a reaction. Derek began pacing beside the counter. He had expected Ben to defend himself emotionally. Each calm answer denied him that advantage. At 12:48, Bon asked the apprentices to resume work. Derek blocked the entrance to Bay 2. No one touches equipment until this is settled. Bon approached, stopping several feet away. Move. You're not exposing property tied to my claim. That lift has a customer's vehicle on it, And if the lift belongs partly to me, it doesn't. Derek stayed in place. Louise came around the other side of the car. We can lower it manually. You'll do nothing, Derek snapped. The customer, an older man waiting near the office, slowly rose from his chair. I was told my brakes would be finished today. Bun nodded toward him. They will be. Derek gestured at the bays. You may want to take your vehicle elsewhere. Management is under dispute. The customer studied Derek, then Ben. Bun has serviced my cars for 19 years. That doesn't make him owner. No, the man replied, but it tells me who I trust. A flush moved across Derek's face. He shifted aside and Luis returned to the lift. It was a small defeat, but Derek answered it by becoming more personal. He walked beneath the 4 framed completion cards and tapped Marcus's frame with one finger. How much did these cost to print? Marcus kept working. Derek tapped again. Did they come with jobs or only encouragement? Bond removed the frame from the wall before Derek could touch it a third time. That belongs to Marcus. Then he should take it home. It stays where he earned it. Derek's voice rose. You keep using that word. Earned. As if showing up long enough gives people ownership. Marcus finally faced him. Nobody asked you for anything. Derek smiled without warmth. You're standing inside my family's property. Bun placed the card on the counter. My father taught us that family was responsibility. And you turned it into a rescue project. No, you turned it into collateral. The shop went still enough for the heater to be heard rattling overhead. Derek's mouth tightened. Nolan opened his briefcase and removed a printed debt notice. Mr. Carter, I should clarify something. My clients are not asserting ownership of this shop. They can pursue only whatever interest you legally hold. Derek snatched the paper from him. Which is why we're proving that interest. If the transfer is valid, Nolan continued, there may be nothing here to attach. You were hired to collect, not lecture me. I was hired to collect lawfully. Derek folded the notice and shoved it into his coat. Bun watched him carefully. The debt was worse than Derek had admitted. That made him unpredictable, but it also explained his urgency. He needed the refinance proceeds before anyone could confirm he owned nothing. At 1:07, Derek entered the office without permission. Bun followed. Derek pulled open the top desk drawer, scattering pens and invoices across the floor. Get away from the desk, Bun said. I'm inspecting records connected to my business. You abandoned this business. I left you in charge. You signed it away. Derek paused, but only briefly. He opened the second drawer and found tax folders, equipment manuals, and payroll envelopes. The transfer ledger was in the bottom drawer. Bun could have dragged him away. He could have shouted for Nolan or called the police. Instead, he closed the office door. The apprentices could still see through the glass, but the customers no longer heard every word. You remember signing, Bun said. Derek's hand rested on the second drawer. I signed papers to keep the bank quiet. You signed because I paid what you owed. You paid because Dad always trusted you with the dirty work. I paid because 6 people were about to lose their jobs. And now you think that makes you noble. No, it made me responsible. Derek pulled the bottom drawer. It moved 2 inches, then stopped against a small internal latch Ben's father had installed decades earlier. Derek yanked harder. Bun placed his palm against the drawer front and pushed it closed. Open it, Derek said. At the meeting. What else is in there? The record you're afraid to remember. Derek shoved Ben's hand aside and reached for the latch beneath the desk. Bun caught his wrist. It was the first time he had physically stopped his brother all day. The movement was controlled but final. You can insult me, Bun said. You can embarrass the people I trained. You can bring creditors into this shop and pretend you never left. But you will not take anything from that drawer. Derek pulled free. For several seconds, the brothers stood on opposite sides of the desk their father had built. Then, Derek opened the office door and announced he's refusing access to company records. Carol remained seated at the closing table. He is preserving a document requested for formal review. Derek pointed at Ben. You're all letting a mechanic control a legal process he doesn't understand. Bun picked up the scattered invoices. Tasha entered and knelt to help. Derek watched her place the papers in order. Still cleaning up after him. She rose with the stack against her chest. No, she said. We clean up after you. Derek took one quick step toward her. Bun moved between them. The creditor's representative stopped writing. Carol closed the refinance folder. Luis and Marcus left their bays. Derek saw the room shift and immediately softened his voice. Everyone is overreacting. I'm trying to save a family business. Bun did not challenge the performance. He simply escorted Tasha back through the office door and asked her to bring the other 3 completion cards from the wall. Why, she asked. Because they belong with the transfer record. At 1:26, Bun unlocked the hidden latch and removed the ledger. The apprentices gathered around the desk as he opened its cover. Their completion cards lay inside, protected between the thick pages. Eli touched the edge of his card. Are we losing the shop? Bun could have offered reassurance he did not yet possess. Instead, he told them the truth. If the refinance fails, we'll be in trouble. If Derek gets control, he'll sell whatever he can. Marcus stared through the glass at Derek. Then why didn't you show this already? Because a proof matters only if it reaches the right table intact. Bun placed each card back inside. Luis spoke quietly. What do you need us to do? Bun closed the ledger. Finish every repair we promised. Let him see that his chaos doesn't decide how we work. The 4 apprentices returned to the bays. Bun carried the ledger to a locked cabinet beside the closing table where Carol witnessed him place it inside. At 1:41, Derek made his next move. He called the city licensing office and reported that unqualified trainees were operating commercial equipment under disputed ownership. Then he stood near the front door and told everyone an inspector could shut the bays down before closing. It was not true yet, but the threat was practical enough to frighten the apprentices and delay the remaining work. Bun heard the call from the office. He had 2 choices: send the 4 of them home to avoid scrutiny, or stand behind the training he had documented for years. He opened the cabinet again. This time, he removed the completion cards from the ledger and handed one to each apprentice. Keep these with you, he said. If an inspector comes, answer honestly. Show your hours, show your work. Don't let him make you ashamed of what you earned. Tasha held her card with both hands. And the ledger. Bun placed it beneath his arm. That stays with me. The clock moved toward 2. Derek believed he had forced Ben to separate the evidence, weaken the team, and choose between the refinance and the apprentices. Instead, Ben had made his choice. He would not save the building by treating the people inside it as expendable. And when the closing table was finally called to order, he carried the one record Derek could not afford to have opened. At 2:04, Carol Vance called the refinance meeting to order. The closing table had been set inside the transfer office, a narrow room behind the service counter with glass walls facing the bays. Ben sat on one side with the ledger beneath his hand. Derek took the opposite chair, Nolan beside him. The 4 apprentices remained outside, the glass completion cards in their pockets, trying to finish the last promised repairs while watching everything that could decide their future. Carol placed the ownership summary at the center of the table. We will address the disputed claim first, she said. If ownership is verified, we proceed. If not, the refinance is suspended. Derek leaned back. Then let's stop wasting time. He repeated the same story he had been telling all afternoon. The shop was founded by their father. Both sons had worked there. Ben had managed operations while Derek pursued other business interests. He described abandonment as delegation. When Carol asked why he had not appeared on tax filings, payroll records, or commercial insurance renewals for 7 years, Derek dismissed them as administrative matters. My brother handled paperwork, he said. That never erased my ownership. Bond remained quiet. Derek mistook restraint for weakness. He pointed through the glass toward the apprentices. The real issue is what Ben has been doing without authorization. He has promised pieces of this company to people who have no legal relationship to it. Luis heard him and stopped tightening a wheel. Derek noticed. He raised his voice. They're not family. They're not investors. They are adults Ben took in because he likes being needed. Bond's fingers rested on the ledger's worn cover. Carol said their status is separate from your ownership claim. It is connected, Derek insisted. If Ben has been giving away future interests, those promises need to be voided before any loan closes. Tasha moved closer to the office window. Derek continued watching her now. You're talented with invoices, I'm told. That doesn't make you an owner. Tasha held her completion card against her side. Nobody said it did. Bond did. He said we could earn partnership. Exactly. He sold you a future he didn't own. The words reached the other 3 apprentices. Marcus lowered the hood of the delivery van more forcefully than necessary. Eli stared at the floor. Luis wiped his hands and began walking toward the office. Bun gave him a slight shake of the head through the glass. Luis stopped. Derek smiled. This is what happens when people confuse kindness with authority. Bun finally spoke. You have made your point. No, I haven't. Derek rose from his chair and opened the office door. Carol said his name sharply, but he stepped into the shop before she could stop him. Everyone listen, he called. The air gun went silent. 2 waiting customers faced him. The tow driver near the entrance lowered his phone. Even the man who had trusted Ben for 19 years remained beside his repaired car instead of leaving. Derek motioned to the apprentices. My brother has allowed these 4 people to believe they have a future here. They do not. Tasha's face tightened. Derek pointed at the lockers along the rear wall. Empty them. No one moved. Now. Bun came through the office door carrying the ledger. You do not give orders here. Derek faced him. Until ownership is established, neither do you. It will be established at the table. I'm establishing control before you give away anything else. He addressed the apprentices again. Take your tools, your certificates, and whatever else Ben handed you to make you feel permanent. Marcus removed his work gloves. These are shop tools. Then leave them. Eli swallowed. We have a customer's car unfinished. Someone qualified will finish it. Eli flinched. Bond's voice stayed low. He is qualified. According to your homemade card. Derek reached toward Eli's chest pocket where the edge of the completion card showed above his coveralls. Eli moved back. Bun placed himself between them. Don't touch him. Derek's expression hardened. You see what you created, grown men hiding behind you. A woman sorting receipts and calling herself a partner. 4 other people's people waiting for you to rescue them. The insult landed differently this time. It was not only contempt. It was an attempt to rewrite every late shift, every exam, every repaired engine, and every morning they had returned after being told elsewhere they would never become dependable. Tasha took her card from her pocket. Her voice shook, but she did not hide it. You taught us where we stood. Derek laughed. Yes. At workstations you don't own. No, she said. You taught us where we stood with you. The smile left his face. Tasha moved beside Ben. Marcus followed. Then Luis and Eli joined them. They did not stand behind their mentor. They stood with him. Derek saw it and chose the cruelest thing he could still reach. He nodded toward the photograph of their father above the office desk. Dad would be ashamed of this. Bond's face changed. It was the first insult all afternoon that found the wound Derek wanted. Their father had spent 40 years building the shop. He had trusted both sons with its name. Ben had carried the failure of that trust as though Derek's abandonment belonged partly to him. Derek moved closer. He left this to his sons. Not to strangers you collected because you couldn't build a family of your own. A chair scraped inside the office as Carol stood. Nolan closed his briefcase. The apprentices held still not from uncertainty, but because they understood how deep the cut had gone. Bun stared at his brother. For one dangerous second, his grip tightened around the ledger. Derek wanted anger. A shove. A shouted threat. Anything he could use to portray Ben as unstable and stop the closing. Bun slowly relaxed his hand. Then he said our father knew the difference between blood and responsibility. Derek scoffed. He knew who carried his name. So do I. Bun returned to the closing table. The apprentices followed as far as the glass wall. Derek remained in the bay, realizing too late that his final insult had not broken Ben. It had brought every witness closer. Carol waited until both brothers were seated again. The deadline is 21 minutes away, she said. Mr. Derek Carter, present evidence of your ownership interest. Derek produced an old business registration showing both brothers connected to Carter Brothers Auto Repair before the foreclosure. Nolan reviewed it. This establishes historical involvement, he said, not current ownership. Derek pushed it toward Carol. It establishes enough to stop the loan. Carol examined the page. By itself, perhaps. Derek leaned forward. Then suspend the refinance. Bun opened the ledger. Derek's attention locked onto the first yellowed page. Bun did not yet reveal the transfer entry. He lifted only the 4 apprenticeship completion cards from inside the cover and placed them side by side on the table. Derek exhaled in disbelief. This is your proof. This is proof of who completed the program. It proves nothing about the building. Bun aligned the cards carefully. Each listed thousands of supervised hours, final evaluations, completion dates, and Ben's signature as program mentor. Carol read the names. Nolan studied the recorded hours. Outside the glass, the apprentices watched years of work reduced to 4 pieces of cardstock and waited to learn whether anyone with authority would recognize what those cards meant. Derek tapped one with his finger. "You printed these yourself?" "Yes, so they are meaningless." "No," Carol said. Derek glanced at her. She lifted Tasha's card. The lender's file references an apprenticeship retention plan attached to the refinance application. Completion status affects staffing continuity and business valuation. That still doesn't make them owners. "Bond never said it did," Carol replied. "He said they are trained partners in the operating plan." Nolan examined Luis's card. "These dates also establish that all 4 completed training before today. They are not temporary trainees you can dismiss as unqualified." The apprentices heard every word. It was not the reversal yet, but it was the first crack in Derek's version of the room. He swept his hand toward the cards. "Fine, they can fix cars, suspend the loan anyway." Bond's palm remained on the ledger. Derek leaned across the table. "You have nothing in there that changes whose family built this place." Bond met his eyes. "No," he said, "I have what changes who owns it." He turned the ledger toward Carol and opened it to the transfer section. A faded signature became visible at the bottom of the page. Derek stopped breathing for a beat. Carol drew the ledger closer. Nolan rose from his chair to read over her shoulder, and through the glass the 4 apprentices saw the precise moment Derek recognized his own handwriting. Derek recovered before anyone spoke. He leaned across the table and jabbed a finger toward the page. "That is not an ownership transfer." Carol Vance kept the ledger flat beneath her hands. "Then tell me what it is." "It was a temporary arrangement with the bank." Nolan Price, read the heading aloud. "Transfers of full business interest." Derek's voice rose. "I signed papers during a foreclosure. Ben was handling the loan. Nobody explained that I was surrendering the company." Vaughn remained seated. "You brought your own attorney," he said. "For the foreclosure. For the transfer." "I don't remember that." "You remembered enough to ask where the ledger was." The answer stopped Derek for half a second. Carol traced the entry with the capped end of her pen. The ink had faded, but the essential lines remained clear. The business name, the transfer date. Derek's relinquished interest and Ben Carter listed as receiving owner. At the bottom sat Derek's signature. Beside it was a second signature from the bank representative who had handled the rescue from foreclosure. Carol took out her phone. "I need lender counsel on speaker." Derek pushed his chair back. "This is ridiculous. A handwritten ledger does not override the original business registration." "It does if it records the later transfer," Carol said. "It could have been altered." Bond's expression did not change. The accusation reached the apprentices through the glass. Marcus moved toward the office door, but Tasha caught his sleeve. Ben did not need anger added to the room. He needed the document heard. Carol called Dana Cole at the lender's legal department and described the page. Dana asked for the date, the identifying number, and the names of both parties. Carol read each one. A keyboard clicked through the speaker. Derek paced behind his chair. "You're relying on a document he kept in his own desk for 7 years." Nolan answered without looking up. "A document bearing your signature." "A signature can be copied." "Then request a formal examination," Ben said. "The refinance can wait while you do." Derek stopped pacing. That was the first time the real choice became visible. If he forced a handwriting review, the loan would be delayed, but so would any chance of using its proceeds to satisfy his debt. If he accepted the signature, his claim disappeared immediately. Bond had not trapped him with anger. He had trapped him with the truth and a deadline. Dana's voice came through the phone. "I found a matching archive reference. The scanned image is incomplete, but the transfer number, date, and bank representative match the original ledger entry." Carol asked, "Does the archive identify the receiving owner?" "The index lists Benjamin Carter." The room changed. Outside the glass, Luis lowered the wrench he had been gripping. Eli moved nearer to the door. One of the customers sat down again, no longer preparing to leave. Derek shook his head. "Ant's index is not proof of intent." Nolan rested both hands on the table. "Intent is not the issue unless you allege fraud or incapacity. The record says you transferred your interest." "I was under pressure." "So was the bank," Ben said. "So were the employees. So was everyone whose money you took before you left." Derek's face tightened. "You think paying one debt made you owner?" "No, your decision made me owner." Carol slid the ledger slightly toward Derek. "Read the final sentence." He did not. Nolan did. transfer or acknowledges receipt of debt relief, and relinquishes all present and future claims to the business equipment trade name and operating property. Through the glass, a silence gathered differently than before. It no longer belonged to humiliation. It belonged to recognition. Derek stared at the page as though refusing to read it could restore the version of the past he had been selling. Then he pointed at the completion cards. Even if Ben owns the building, those four still have no claim. He promised them partnership before the refinance. That could violate the loan terms. Bun picked up the cards. Derek seized on the movement. There, those are homemade. No state seal, no union approval, no independent certification. Tasha's shoulders stiffened. The central proof had established ownership. But Derek still believed he could reduce the apprentices to liabilities and poison the refinance before he lost control completely. Bun placed the cards back on the table. They were not issued by the state, he said. They were issued through this shop's registered training plan. Derek laughed. Registered where? Carol opened the refinance packet and removed the staffing appendix. Here. She laid it beside the cards. The appendix listed the four apprentices by name. Each was identified as having completed the shop's supervised training requirements with their retention included in the lender's operating forecast. Derek snatched the page. This was submitted by Ben and independently reviewed during underwriting, Carol said. The refinance was evaluated on the expectation that these four qualified workers would remain. Nolan took the page from him before it tore. Removing them today would not strengthen the loan, he said. It could undermine it. Derek's voice became louder, but the authority had drained from it. They are employees. Bun can fire them whenever he wants. Pon rose. The apprentices could see him clearly now. I can, he said, and I won't. Derek stared at him. Bun gathered the four cards and walked out of the transfer office. He stopped before Luis, Tasha, Marcus, and Eli. For years, he had taught them to finish the work before asking what it was worth. He had delayed telling them about partnership because he feared promising something the refinance might not support. Now waiting would allow Derek's cruelty to become the final word. Bun handed each person a completion card. You finished your apprenticeships, he said. You earned the right to stand here as trained mechanics. He faced the witnesses in the shop. And when this refinance closes, I will offer each of them a partnership share under the operating plan already submitted to the lender. Tasha's eyes filled, but she held her card steadily. Luis asked, You were really going to do that? Bun nodded. I was waiting until the papers were safe. Marcus glanced toward Derek. They are now. Bun returned to the office and stood beside the ledger. This shop belongs to me, he said. The decision about who belongs inside it is mine. Derek has no authority over these people, their lockers, their jobs, or their future here. He did not shout. That made the boundary harder to challenge. Carol checked the wall clock. Dana, based on the original ledger and archive match, can legal clear the ownership condition. Dana answered through the speaker. Yes. Send photographs of the full entry and signature page. The refinance may proceed subject to final document verification, but Derek Carter has no recorded ownership interest. Nolan slowly closed his briefcase. Derek faced him. You are not leaving. My clients can collect only property you own. I own part of this. You do not. The building has my name on it. The debt notice cannot attach painted lettering. A customer near the entrance covered a brief cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Derek's head snapped toward him. Nolan continued in the same professional tone. I will report that the shop is not an available asset. Your other obligations remain outstanding. Derek's control finally broke. He grabbed the ledger. Bun caught the cover before he could pull it away. The two brothers held opposite sides of the book. Let go, Derek said. Bun's voice was quiet. You already did. Derek pulled harder, but Nolan placed one hand over the page to protect it, while Carol called for him to release the document. Every witness watched. Derek had spent the afternoon presenting Ben as emotional confused and unfit to control the business. Now he was the one trying to tear the record that disproved him. His fingers opened. Bun drew the ledger back and closed it. Derek pointed towards the apprentices. You think they'll save this place? They'll leave the minute somebody offers them more. Eli spoke from outside the office. You left when people needed you. Luis added, we stayed. Derek had no answer that did not deepen the comparison. Carol placed the final refinance documents before Ben. The ownership condition is cleared. We still need your signatures before 2:30. The clock read 2:27. Bun sat down. Derek remained standing beside the table. No longer a claimant, no longer an authority, and no longer useful to the creditor he had brought as an audience. Bun signed the refinance agreement. Carol signed after him and transmitted the documents to the lender. 8229 Dana confirmed receipt. The loan would fund after final processing. The equipment repairs could proceed. The roof could be replaced. The shop's payroll and operating plan remained intact. Derek's debt was not erased. Only his plan to make everyone else pay it had failed. Nolan opened the transfer office door and gestured toward the exit. I suggest you contact your creditors directly. Derek glanced once at the old sign above the service bays, then at the 4 completion cards held by the people he had called disposable. No one asked him to stay. When the front door closed behind him, the shop did not erupt in celebration. The compressor hummed. Snowmelt dripped from a vehicle near Bay 1. A customer quietly picked up his keys. Then Tasha approached Ben. She held her completion card against her chest. You kept all of us, she said. Bun glanced at the 4 faces around him. No, he replied. You kept showing up. Luis reached out and gripped Ben's shoulder. Marcus joined him. Then Eli. Tasha stepped closer last. For years they had called him Ben Boss or Mentor. This time, Luis spoke for all 4. Thank you for treating us like family. Bun lowered his eyes to the transfer ledger in his hands. The page inside proved that Derek had given away the shop. But the people surrounding Ben proved something far more important. Responsibility had built a family where abandonment had left an empty space. The shop closed an hour late that evening. No one complained. Luis finished the brake job Derek had tried to stop. Marcus completed the delivery van. Eli diagnosed the towed sedan, and Tasha stayed at the parts counter until every invoice was matched and filed. Bun moved between the bays as he always had, checking torque settings, answering questions, and sweeping around work that was already done. Only the transfer ledger resting on the office desk showed that anything had changed. Carol left after confirming the refinance had entered final processing. Before she walked out, she paused beside the 4 apprentices. The lender will need updated partnership documents after funding, she said. Make sure you read everything before signing. Tasha smiled. We learned that today. Carol glanced toward Ben. I think you learned it from the right person. Nolan had departed without Derek. He made no promise about what the creditors would do next, only that the shop would not be listed among Derek's assets. The consequence was quiet and procedural. Derek still owed the money. He simply could not use Ben's building equipment or employees to escape it. By the end of the week, his creditors had begun pursuing his remaining property and accounts. He sent Ben 2 angry messages claiming the transfer had been unfair. Bun did not argue. He replied once. You signed the shop away. Do not contact my employees again. Then he blocked the number. The refinance funded 6 days later. There were no banners or photographers. A deposit appeared in the business account. The old commercial loan was replaced, and Ben finally approved repairs he had postponed for years. The leaking roof above Bay 3 was torn away and rebuilt. The failing hydraulics were replaced. A new diagnostic computer arrived in a plain cardboard box, and Eli read the manual twice before anyone allowed him to power it on. Bun kept his promise about partnership. I hired a local business attorney to prepare the documents properly. Each apprentice received a small initial share, a defined path to earn more, and a clear explanation of responsibilities. They did not become rich overnight. They became accountable for something they had helped preserve. Louise took charge of customer estimates and quality checks. Tasha oversaw purchasing and financial records. Marcus managed fleet work while Eli specialized in electrical diagnostics. Bun remained the majority owner and senior mentor. The arrangement worked because none of them confused belonging with entitlement. 3 months later, the new roof held through the first heavy Cleveland storm. Rain hammered the metal flashing while the 5 of them stood inside Bay 3, staring upward out of habit. No water fell. Marcus placed an empty bucket beneath the old leak anyway. Tasha laughed. You know we don't need that now. I've been disappointed by ceilings before. Bun smiled and carried the bucket back to storage. The old transfer ledger remained in the office but no longer in the bottom drawer. Bun placed it on a high shelf beneath the photograph of his father. Beside it, he arranged copies of the 4 completion cards. The ledger no longer felt like evidence he had to guard. It was a record of a burden completed. One afternoon, Luis found Ben standing before the shelf. "You ever think about changing the sign?" he asked. Through the office glass, the faded words, "Carter Brothers Auto Repair," could be seen above the service bays. Bun considered it. "Sometimes. Derek hasn't been part of this place in years. I know. So why keep Brothers?" Bun studied the sign. For most of his life, the word had meant blood. Then it became a reminder of betrayal. After the closing, it seemed to mean something else. He glanced toward the space where Marcus and Eli were arguing over a wiring diagram while Tasha corrected both of them. "Maybe it doesn't have to mean," Derek Ben said. The following spring, they repainted the sign. They kept the original name, but added a smaller line beneath it: Mentorship, Craft, Responsibility. The new lettering was simple enough that passing drivers barely noticed. The people inside understood. Derek never returned. Bun occasionally heard fragments through former customers. His vehicle had been repossessed. A creditor obtained a judgment against him. He moved out of Ohio and continued insisting that his brother had taken what belonged to him. Bun felt no triumph in those reports. Consequences were not revenge. They were what remained when excuses finally stopped protecting a person from his own choices. On the first anniversary of the refinance, the apprentices arrived before Ben. When he unlocked the side door at 6, the lights were already on. Fresh coffee waited beside the service manuals, and all 4 completion cards had been removed from the office shelf. Bun found Luis, Tasha, Marcus, and Eli standing beneath the main sign. Their cards were mounted together in a new wooden frame. A brass plate beneath them read, "Trained by Ben Carter, who taught us to stay." Bun read the line twice. "You didn't need to do this," he said. "We know," Tasha replied. "That's why we did it," Marcus added. Eli handed Ben a small box. Inside was a new red shop rag folded into a perfect square. Luis grinned. The old one was becoming a safety hazard. Bun laughed, but his eyes filled. For years, he had believed responsibility meant carrying everything without asking to be thanked. He had confused endurance with silence and protection with never admitting how much abandonment had cost him. The 4 people before him had learned mechanics from Ben, but they had also learned that gratitude should be spoken while someone was still there to hear it. Luis extended his hand. Bun ignored it and pulled him into an embrace. The others joined until all 5 stood beneath the repaired roof, laughing awkwardly in a shop that had once nearly been chained shut forever. Later that morning, Ben returned the transfer ledger to its shelf. He opened it once more to Derek's signature, then closed the cover without anger. A signature had transferred the property. Years of responsibility had transformed it into a home. And sometimes the people who inherit a legacy are not the ones who share the original name. They are the ones who show up, learn the work, protect one another, and refuse to leave when responsibility becomes difficult. So what matters more in a family blood, or the choice to remain dependable when someone needs you? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories about dignity, justice, and quiet second chances matter to you, subscribe for the next one.